Welcome, Abound family. This is the inaugural quarterly report for second quarter 2019.
That's right. We're excited to be here with you guys. We're trying something a little different. Normally we send a written commentary, but we thought we have access to the studio, access to all this technology. We ought to come to you guys live in video format to share some information with you about the second quarter.
So what we want to do, this is set up, guys, just so you know, we plan on this growing. This is just our first attempt at this.
Right.
We want this to expand to where hopefully in coming quarters we'll be able to make it live, so we create it and turn it into an event.
Yep.
And then we also want to make it where you guys have an ability to be a participant, where we actually take your input, take some questions, and even address that at the end of these video quarterly commentaries.
That's exactly right. And if you have any feedback, anything you think that could be more valuable or better for you, ultimately this is designed just for you guys. So let us know that, and we're happy to receive that.
So, Bo, let's kind of jump into this. What happened in the second quarter of 2019?
Yeah, so if you remember, the second quarter was a little unique and interesting from a financial standpoint. There were a few big things that happened. So if we think about it on a month-by-month basis, in the month of April, there were 263,000 jobs added to the economy, which was higher than expected. So that was a positive. It was a good thing.
That's a good thing.
Well, then we got into May, and trade negotiations between the U.S. and China began to break down, and it was a little turbulent there for a while, so not so much of a good thing. And then in June, we actually saw some improvement in trade negotiations where the tariffs on Mexico were called off. So we went good, kind of bad, and then kind of good again.
Don't change the screen yet, though, because this is, at the end of the day, you guys are going to start getting your quarterly reports. You're going to see, hey, this is great,
Yep.
because we had a great first quarter of 2019. I got my June 30th statement. I've gotten my second quarter quarterly report from Abound Wealth, and things are awesome.
Right.
Do we really remember the journey that was the second quarter of 2019? And this is a great case study. Before Bo brings it up, this is a great case study of why you guys have to watch what comes into your eyes and your ears, because there's a force out there that's putting so much noise, so much information out there that's going to cloud your judgment. And even though, as Bo just showed you, that's why I love it's just 3 points. April was positive, May was down, and then June was positive. But pay attention to May, because what sells newspapers, what puts eyeballs on TV sets, it's the fear. So go ahead and show them the slide. Look at this slide. Now here's what I think is interesting. This is a headline that we pulled up for what happened in the month of May.
I think this was May 12th of 2019 was when
So
this came out.
remember, Bo said that trade negotiations broke down with China, so it was just a blip.
Yep.
But look what the stocks plunged. Now, I just had a tweet that I did about 2 weeks ago where the market was down 0.16% in a day.
Okay.
That's less than a quarter, less than 20% of
nothing.
1%.
Yep.
It really is just a blip. And you can see they use the same terminology, stocks plunge, on China tariff retaliation. And you can even see they must have dug hard to find a trader who's so depressed about 2019 so far that he put his head in his hands.
Buried.
This is exactly what is going on with the financial media. Be very careful what you put in your brain, because in the short term, markets are all over the place.
Right.
But in the long term, they are spectacular, because you have to believe, you have to be optimistic about innovation, technology, and just how the world is marching on to progress and better and greater things.
So if we think about this, and we think about the way that the headlines kind of cast that, and we look at how that practically played out in the portfolios, if we just look at the domestic U.S. economy, the S&P 500, you can see that in the month of April, the S&P 500 was up about 3.9%. We saw the turbulence and volatility in the month of May. It was down a little over 6.5%. And then June was a great month. We made almost 7% in the month of June. So it was a good, a bad, and a good if you just look at a month-by-month basis.
And in the result, we made money.
In result, it was a positive quarter. So we thought, rather than focusing on just a quarter, we wanted to talk about something, if we look at the long term, if we kind of stretch it out a little bit, because we hear folks all the time say to us, now obviously this isn't you guys, but maybe this is...
These are clients.
Yeah, this is maybe your loved ones or folks that you have influence on, say, well, isn't the market kind of like gambling? Isn't it kind of like, isn't investing kind of like gambling? And we said, okay, well, let's look at the numbers and see if it is like gambling, what's the edge? So we said if we go look at the S&P 500 returns from 1969 all the way through the end of 2018, and we just look at it on a day-by-day basis, How many days are positive and how many days are negative?
And I do want to add, when we're using the S&P 500, because you guys know when you look at your quarterly report, you'll notice we love indexes. So when we talk about the S&P 500, when you look at your large cap exposure, a large portion of it, the probably lion's share of it, is going directly into the S&P 500. Right. So you're participating in this positive progress, as you'll see as we lay the numbers out.
So on a day-by-day basis, it does, according to the numbers, look a little bit like a coin flip.
Yeah, it's a little greater than a coin flip.
That's
so you're like, every day it's just 50-50 or 53-47. How are we making money in this thing?
And so fortunately, when we look at investment decisions and designing portfolios, we don't think on a day-by-day basis. So if we actually expand our time frame a touch to a week, it improves 57%, but it still feels a little bit like a coin flip. It's not quite 50-50, but it's pretty close. So then if we stretch it out to 1 month, about 62% of the time, if you look on a month-by-month basis from 1969 all the way through the end of 2018, it was positive. And so we can kind of see that, it's about 2/3 almost. We actually saw that exact.
So multiply that by 12, what happens?
Yeah, so when you look at on a year, 80% of the time, the market is positive.
So time is your friend, guys. The longer you stay in the markets, the more it takes the volatility out, and it also allows the money to have a chance to weather it and then let that technology, that innovation, turn it in a positive direction. Here's another key point I want to make, because we say all the time on the podcast, on the show, as well as with clients, is that 8 out of 10 years markets make money.
Yep.
But here's another thing you have working for you. This is just the S&P 500, which is one asset class, meaning this is one group of investments that we use. Now, it's a big one, but we diversify. We add other asset classes that will actually push this percentage even higher. But go ahead and continue on and show them what just doing stocks does in the long term.
Yeah, if you stretch out to 5 years, just investing in that one piece of pie on your allocation chart, the S&P 500, 90% of the time, almost 90, 89% of the time on a 5-year basis, you're positive. When we look at it on a decade, 95% of the time you're positive. And then what we think is just absolutely remarkable is on a 15-year rolling basis, 100% of the 15-year periods from 1969 through 2018, you would have been positive if you just gave the portfolio time to do what it does.
And we tell everybody, don't invest money unless you have 5 to 7 years to let the money work through any cycles and to be a long-term perspective. I will tell you, it's worth repeating, that 5-year mark is 89% when you're just talking about equities. Mm-hmm. When you add that asset allocation that we put in your portfolios, we can push that up pretty close to 100% after about 5 years. It's a great thing, and that's why we do diversify.
Now, you guys already know this, and you guys already have this long-term perspective. So we thought, okay, we want to share a little bit of information, not just about the investments in the markets. We want to talk about maybe something you've been hearing out there in the financial press, something that you may or may not have heard of, so that we can educate you guys on that.
Yeah, well, there's one, because think about this. If we know we're going to have volatility, how often does it actually happen?
Oh, yeah.
So one of the things I think is interesting, if we're going to prepare for volatility, 5%, because you guys, we're either going to end the year up or down, but usually 80% of the time on a year-over-year basis is going to be positive, but there is going to be volatility. It's that walk up the mountain with the yo-yo. Remember, with the yo-yo, you're throwing it up and down in the short term, but you are walking to higher ground. Yep. Look at what happens 3 times a year. What do we average?
Yeah, on average, if you want to think about how often do 5% losses happen, they usually happen 3 times a year. Yeah. Well, the good thing is that when they happen, the average length of time it takes to recover is about 46 days, so about a month and a half.
But when we don't get calls about 5%.
No, never.
We don't even really get calls about 10%. You guys are so awesome out there. Our clients are spectacular, and I think part of it is because you get it. You understand. A lot of you guys are financial mutants where you get excited by volatility, not to get scared, but just to kind of go through. Once a year, you can expect to see the market adjust 10% or lose 10%. We've even sent out a graphic. We use it. We always roll this out when we're approaching a big downturn because we want to calm you down. Every year, the market typically loses over 10%.
That's right.
Even in positive years.
That's exactly
Every year this happens. And then look at this, 15%, because you start getting a little nervous when markets lose 15%. That happens about every 2 years.
Which is a lot more frequent than you think, because we just showed you that 8 out of 10 years the market's positive, but in every 2 or so, it drops 15
intra-year. There's going to be volatility. And here's a big one. 20%, because why is 20% a big deal? Bear markets.
Yep.
When you hear the market has lost 20%, that is the trigger point for saying we hit a bear market.
Yep.
Now, what I think is interesting, you see we hit those every 3.75 years. What I think is interesting is how many people realize fourth quarter of 2018, we actually hit the 20% mark.
That's exactly right.
Now, here's what's great. We hit that mark and then we hit recovery because there's this effect called the pluck effect, meaning that the sharper, if you pull a piano string or a guitar string down, the further you pull it down, the more tension it creates, and typically the faster it propels itself back up. Because markets recover in kind of a V-shaped recovery. Fourth quarter was so intense, it lost it very rapidly, that we hit the recovery mode where all of you guys made your money back in that first quarter.
And so what's the big takeaway here? Our opinion is the markets are pretty hard to predict and pretty hard to accurately address in the short term.
Yep.
But as you stretch out your time frame and as you take a long-term perspective, it becomes much easier to be a successful investor.
Especially if you insulate yourself from the negative information that the press is putting out there.
That's exactly right.
So let's pivot to financial planning issues, because we go, not only are we your investment advisors, we're also your financial planners, and there is a lot of hot button issues going on right now. Now, full disclosure, what we're about to bring up is still it's in the kitchen. They've made the dough, they've kneaded the dough, but it has not fully baked in the oven yet. I just want y'all to know that, but we want to be on the front end of kind of giving you what's out there, and it's the Secure Act.
The Secure Act, Brian, how'd they come up with that name?
I want to be the guy who is, because it's an intern. Washington has its own intern program too, and they're like, look, we want to come up with legislation that has something catchy, but it has to be an acronym. So it's got to use all these letters, and I want it to spell secure. So there's some poor person that was put in a room and tasked with coming up with an acronym for secure. So here's what it came up with. I feel like we need a drum roll, but it's setting every community up for retirement enhancement.
That makes me
Some
get really
poor
excited.
person in a room. That's probably, I'm not allowed, by the way, if y'all didn't know, for the podcast and the Money Guy show, I'm never allowed to name stuff. It's probably because I would come up with some acronym like Secure Act.
For sure.
So let's kind of go in, what does this nifty little acronym, Secure, actually do for you and your wallet?
And our goal is, rather than you guys having to actually dial into the legislation yourself, we're just going to bring up some highlights and kind of share with you the things that you ought to pay attention to that may or may not have an impact on you. So the very first point is that one thing that the Secure Act is going to do is it's going to eliminate the age 7.5 cap for contributing to a traditional IRA. As it stands now, once you hit RMD age, you can no longer contribute to those IRAs. That's going to go away.
Yeah, it's going to allow people, because I always say, what's the purpose for legislation? Why are they even approaching this? I think there is a group of retiring older Americans that are still in the workforce. And there's two things. They want to continue to save and invest in their future because they are working. But then there's also a group of people that they reach 70 and a half, and they're like, I have to start taking my assets out already. So they want to prolong that or push that out. So that's why you'll see the second thing is they are increasing required minimum distribution age, meaning the age that the government, our favorite taxing uncle, requires you to start taking money out of your retirement accounts is going to go from 70 and a half up to 72. That's good. That's a win.
That is a good thing.
But there's going to be a cost, as we'll show you in a minute, because they want to try to make this as revenue neutral as possible. So they're going to give you a little bit, but they will be taking some on the back end, and we'll explain.
Another thing that the government's recognized, and that we all as consumers have recognized, and you certainly as clients have recognized, is that the burden for saving for retirement now kind of falls on our shoulders.
That's exactly right.
One of the things that's going to come out of the Secure Act is they want to now require employers to disclose the amount of sustainable monthly income that their 401k could produce. It's basically just showing folks, hey, you need to be saving because where you are right now, this is how much it'll generate. If you save more, this is how much more, so that you don't get to retirement or so that future retirees don't get to retirement and say, oh, wow, I had no idea that I was unprepared.
Now, a lot of you guys, as you approach retirement, we do full Monte Carlo simulations on your stuff, but I do think for the average employee, this is going to be a good thing, that they actually see, hey, maybe I need to be saving a little bit more.
Another thing that they're going to do is they're going to make it easier when you get to retirement to convert employer retirement plans into lifetime annuities or lifetime income streams.
I think a lot of people are nervous that we went from a system that was pensions where to now it falls strictly on the employee to save enough money. So this is well intentioned in the fact that, especially as interest rates go up, I think a portion going into annuities, especially fixed annuities that just pay out like a pension, traditional pension, is good. I do have some reservation that I hope lifetime annuities is not followed by more life insurance salesmen pushing products, essentially letting the fox into the hen house. But I do think it has potential to add more tools to the toolbox for retirement planning.
Another one of the things that the Act is going to do is it's going to allow multiple small business to maybe consolidate into one 401k type plan for cost efficiency. That'll affect some folks, but maybe not as big.
This is like, obviously when you buy your toilet paper at Costco, it's cheaper than when you buy your toilet paper at a local drugstore. So this is going to allow you to hopefully, small employers to kind of huddle up and then have more buying power and give some better opportunities to their employees.
For those of folks that are interested in birth or have birth or adoption expenses, they're going to allow you to take up to $5,000 of distributions from your retirement accounts now. So they're adding, I don't want to call this a hardship, but they're just adding another provision where you can access those dollars.
It was penalty free. It's not going to be tax free,
That's
though.
right.
I thought that was a key provision when I was looking at some of the proposals.
Another thing they're going to do is they're going to allow long-term part-time workers to now participate in 401k plans. Previously, they could have been excluded. They're going to start trying to make that more inclusive of long-term part-time employees.
We've seen a trend that a lot of firms are hiring employees and treating them more like part-time employees, meaning keeping their hours less than 30 hours because of health care and all kind of other requirements. I think this is just making sure that we're not excluding a certain portion of the population from the ability to invest in their own future and retirement.
Now, this next one had us scratching our heads a little bit. It says you can withdraw up to $10,000 from a 529 plan to repay student loans.
I think it's well-intentioned because we know there's a student loan crisis right now, and people are, the younger generations are starting to wisen up to the fact that they have all these student loans on maybe majors that aren't producing a lot of return for them through cash flow and income and wages. So, but the thing that made me scratch my head is that if you have $10,000 of 529 assets, why do you even have a student loan?
I couldn't figure that either.
I think it's well intentioned, and it's kind of a check mark, or saying, hey, we're at least throwing a bone to you guys, but I don't know how powerful that actually is.
How useful it's actually going to be. Another one of the changes is they're going to repeal the kiddie tax change that allowed unearned income of children to be taxed at the trust tax rate.
Yeah, this was just unintended consequences. I'm sure a lot of our elected officials heard from, because where I heard that this came to a head about is that there were a lot of first responders, military, widows, and children beneficiaries that were getting much higher tax rates than they anticipated. So they're trying to correct an unintended consequence.
And then this last one, other than increasing RMDs from 70.5 to age 72, I think this is probably the biggest one that would likely impact clients or clients planning for the next generation. It's going to largely eliminate the stretch IRA rules and instead require inherited IRAs to be paid out over a period no greater than 10 years.
This is, when I was reading about the legislation, this is actually where they're going to give you a little bit, but then they're going to take some away. This is how they're going to pay for it. Now, I also think, we were talking about this from a theory. Now, this is where I think I said it was baking in the oven. There's going to be some changes. This is not signed. This is passed the House. The Senate has indicated they're probably going to pass a version of the House instead of creating their own separate Senate version that's going to require compromise. I think the Senate's just going to vote on the House version, but it still has not made it through the Senate, and it definitely has not gotten the nod from the president yet to become true legislation. But I do think it's something we'll keep watching. We're going to keep you apprised of it.
That's right.
And you don't have to spend a lot of brain power on this because we're going to do that for you.
That's exactly right. The big thing for you to know is that we are aware of it. We are looking into it. And as planning opportunities do present themselves, we're going to be there to bring them to you guys to say, hey, maybe we ought to start thinking about this. We just want to let you know that that's out there. That's what's going on right now.
I want to kind of close this out with some positives about some of the great things. You guys, I call you all the time. I mention Money Guy Family, and I mention the Abound Family. The Abound Family, you guys are a part of. That's why you're getting this special video. You're getting this special quarterly commentaries because you are part of the client family, meaning that you have thought enough of what we're doing that you've hired us as your financial advisors, and we can't thank you enough. And we felt like since you already are invested in this enterprise, we ought to give you an update of what's going on at Abound. So we did a slide called Abound by the Numbers, and you guys are a big part of this success, so we want to kind of share this with you. So the first thing is that we are quickly approaching And this blows my mind because I remember when I started this company, my first version of this company in 2002. It was Preston Financial, became Preston and Cleveland, then became Abound. I always said if I could get to 100 million, I wouldn't know what to do with myself.
Just be success
And
beyond success.
you can see we're quickly about to approach 300 million in assets under management. So that's big.
In addition to that 300 million, we now are serving clients, serving you guys in 39 states. So we have a majority of the country covered, all because you guys have entrusted us to come in on this journey with you, which is really amazing.
That's awesome stuff. We have, and it all started, the fast, rapid growth started with the Money Guy Show, which was started in 2006 as a podcast. Just last month, we had 110,000 downloads of the audio-only version of the Money Guy Show through podcasts.
So that's Stitcher, iTunes, iHeartRating, all the audio versions.
We added, and you can see this, we're very close to crossing 30,000 subscribers. This is a YouTube tracking indicator that we keep in the studio. We added over 5,000 subscribers just in the last month. It was truly incredible. 30,000 subscribers on YouTube.
And because of adding those 30,000 subscribers, in the month of June alone, our YouTube channel had over 500,000 views in 1 month.
And that only tells part of the story. Show them how many minutes. That's 4.6 million minutes of Bo and Brian on air being consumed. It's kind of crazy, when you think of how many years that is. That's years. That's just incredible.
It's unbelievable. We now have grown our team. You've talked to and are working with a number of our new team members here. We now have 11 total team members here at Abound Wealth, which is just absolutely incredible.
Yeah, I love it when we have team lunches. I love it's not uncommon to go into the conference room and see everybody around a table eating. The dynamics are incredible. We pick on each other like a good family would, but I think we have a blast of a time. And that ties in. Here's another thing, because we were picking on these guys earlier. We have 2 interns. We had our first year that we actually brought in interns, and we plan on this being an annual tradition now, that we are going to bring in people that are still in school and try to love on them a little bit and see if we can't grow the firm, not only from hiring interns, but also by educating interns that are at several colleges across the country.
This is our small way to try to impact the future of the financial planning profession. If we can bring in college students here to learn, get trained up, even the ones that don't become full-time team members, we want them to go out and be impactful out there in the financial planning world.
So that leads to the last thing, which is so important, and that's you. We are one amazing family. You are a big part of Abound Wealth. I think about this is that since this is our inaugural video conference, I hope that this becomes a tradition, that you're so excited to kind of see what's going on with the firm, but also which financial planning issues we're going to be bringing to you every quarter, as well as just walking you through what did we just go through financially with the markets. But you are the biggest part of this, so I would ask you, if you love what we're doing and you want to be an active part of this, continue, share this. We made this a private video. This video is only for you guys that are Abound family members and clients of the firm. We're going to be sending this out through your web portal that you'll have as a client to look at your actual quarterly report. But we're also going to be sending out a MailChimp or an email to you, so you'll actually be able to get this. We're telling you, here's something exclusive you can do. In addition to you getting this private thing, feel free to share it with family and friends. We know that we would not be able to make this possible unless we had you as family members. So it would be ridiculous for us not to allow you to share that with your loved ones as well. So thank you, thank you, thank you. You have no idea just the gratitude we have for all of you. And we have, you can't see it, you just see me and Bo, but we have a whole room full of people here that are making this happen. And we just have a blast, and we truly cherish all the things we get to do with you as clients, and we just feel so blessed. So thank you so much.
If you have any questions, any feedback, any comments, any way that we can make this better for you, more valuable for you, more useful for you, by all means, reach out to us, reach out to your advisor, reach out to one of our team members. Thank you, thank you, thank you for allowing us to go on this journey with you guys.
Thanks, guys.